Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed my last week's video on Cambodia, and this week we're gonna dive into Thailand. So I really enjoyed Thailand. My mom actually came to visit me for 3 weeks, and so I got to explore it with my mom. Really was happy that she came. It was a nice way to break up my trip from solo backpacking and having a wild time to just kind of taking a step back and enjoying my time traveling and slow things down a little bit. So to start, my mom and I began in Bangkok. So this is where she flew in, and I came to get her from Siem Reap. So I met her in Bangkok from here. So how I would suggest getting from Siem Reap to Bangkok is flying. Don't take a bus. My friends and I took a bus and it took us around 12 hours and we wasted an entire day doing so. Meanwhile, our other friend decided to fly, and he left like 6 hours later and ended up beating us to Bangkok. So if you have the options or the funds, I would suggest flying rather than taking a bus from at least Siem Reap to Bangkok. My mom flew into the airport and I decided to pick her up from the airport just because I knew Bangkok would be a little bit crazy. So how I decided to do this was just take the train. So there's a train that takes you, or subway, kind of same thing, that takes you from the city to the airport and then back into the city. So it was around, I think, like 11 p.m. when her flight got in. So I went and got her at the airport, and then we caught the last train back into the city. And once we were in the city, we took a Grab from the station to our Airbnb, and that's kind of how we did that. So I highly suggest using this train. It's really cheap and really easy to figure out. So after Bangkok, my mom and I went to Koh Tao, which is where I was going to do my scuba certification. So getting to Koh Tao took an entire day to complete. We flew from Bangkok to Surat Thani, and then from there we had a layover for 4 or 5 hours in the airport, and then we finally got to take a bus to the ferry terminal, and from the ferry terminal we got on to a ferry and we were the last stop. So it took us honestly a full day to get to Koh Tao. So Koh Tao is beautiful. I loved it. I had an idea of where I wanted to do my scuba certification before we got there, but I didn't book it ahead. Kind of just showed up and then went for a walk, confirmed it with them. So across the entire island, every scuba shop, probably hundreds on this island, it's like one of the cheapest places in the world to do your scuba certification. So when you are here, it's 11,000 baht, which I think came to around 400 or 500 Canadian dollars. I went to Sari Cottage diving and I really liked it. There was just 2 people in my group, so me and somebody else, and that was great. We had pretty much an instructor to ourselves. We could kind of do what we wanted when we actually were diving. When we like whipped through the pool stuff, like it was pretty great. I really recommended it, and our instructor was fabulous. She was hilarious. I cannot recommend anywhere else. I really enjoyed it there. If I was traveling alone, I probably would have got my advanced open water, maybe my rescue diving. I loved it so much, and I think you could easily spend a month in Koh Tao, and I kind of wish I did, so I'll probably be back to Koh Tao. It's a really cool place to check out. So after Koh Tao, my mom and I went to Koh Sok National Park. So this is a really cool spot. It's very jungly. So when we first got there, we were staying at, I think, Green Mountain Homestay, ? That might be the one I stayed in Vietnam, something along those lines. It was really neat. We could walk to the entrance of the national park, so we did that, and we did a hike one day and just explored there. We saw a lot of really cool things. There's monkeys in there. We saw this massive lizard thing. I'm not really sure what it was, but it was like that big. It was large. Through this homestay to choose an excursion. So this is kind of why we came here. I wanted to do the floating bungalows, which I recommend. It was so cool. It's a 2-day, 1-night tour, and they take you into a different entrance of the park, and you get on a long tail boat and you explore everywhere. You do a trek through the jungle, and then they take you to these floating bungalows. So you hang out there for the afternoon. It was very warm, so we went swimming and hung out with everyone else, like grabbed a few beers, things like that. And then from there, they take you on a nighttime safari. And then the next morning, you wake up and you do a morning safari. So again, we saw a lot of monkeys and cool fish and birds and things like that. And then after that, pack up and have a chill morning, and then you exit the park. But it was really worth it. I think it was only $100 Canadian, and it was just a really cool experience. And the floating bungalows were really fun. I really enjoyed that. And we swam a lot, which I love swimming, so great times all around. So from Koh Tao, we booked transportation, which took us to Krabi. And this was only about an hour and a half, 2 hours. It wasn't very long at all. So in Krabi, we had this really nice condo where we stayed for about a week. We both agreed that this was too much time to stay in Krabi. However, it was kind of that awkward amount of time where we didn't know if we should book somewhere else and risk our trip feeling too rushed, or just like hang out in Krabi and relax for the week. And it was really nice. Like, we had a really cool condo, it had a pool, and it was kind of just outside the hub of things, so you could walk in easily. It was about a 20-minute walk to the beach, and it wasn't necessarily on the main strip, but it was close to everything to do there. Beaches in Krabi were beautiful, and there's lots of things that you could do. So we did do a very touristy, I think like 5 or 8 island boat trip one day, and went to all the islands around there. We also went to Railay Beach, which again, super touristy, but it was really beautiful there nonetheless. And just walking up and down the main strip was pretty cool. I actually met up with friends that I was traveling with in Cambodia here, and we went and checked out a night market and rented scooters and did things like that. But overall, I think I'd spend 3 nights in Krabi. I think that's more than enough time, but again, it was pretty nice to just hang out with my mom and relax and just kind of stay put for a while, because she was looking for a vacation too, rather than my chaotic backpacking schedule. Another recommendation is, when you are in Thailand, I'd recommend carrying a backpack. So my mom got out her backpack from the 90s, and her and I were backpacking in Thailand together, so I just think it's a lot easier than lugging around a suitcase there. It's not really made for suitcases, but it is made for backpacks, and it was great. The next thing that I would recommend is paying attention, in Bangkok at least, to where your accommodation is. Before my mom got there, I got there a day ahead of her, and I stayed with my friends at a slumber party hostel, and it was kind of far out of the city, or just far from the things we wanted to see, so we had to continuously take grabs everywhere, which started to get expensive. And once my mom got into Bangkok, we were staying in Chinatown, and it was really cool staying there. It had a lot of cultural aspects that I really did enjoy, but then we were also grabbing back to where my friends were when we went out for drinks and things like that with them. Again, just paying attention to where your accommodation is in Bangkok is super important, just because it is such a massive city, and if you aren't really in the desired location that you want to be in, you'll spend a ton of money on transportation trying to get to those other places. The other thing that I'd recommend is, again, continue taking grabs. They aren't overly expensive, and I wouldn't suggest taking taxis. I found they often give you the worst rate and are trying to scam you, so grabs are already set. It's pretty much just like Uber, and that's kind of how we did it. We also both got SIM cards once we were in Thailand, so make sure your phone is unlocked. My mom's phone was not unlocked. Once we got to the store, they inserted the SIM card for her and it wouldn't work, or something along those lines, so we had to call back to her Canadian phone provider and unlock her phone abroad. Much easier if you're already in your home country to do that, so it is doable. We did it, and she managed to have data throughout her entire trip, but I'd just make sure to do that prior to leaving and get a SIM card. They're very cheap and it's great. You can use Wi-Fi anywhere, great for directions and things like that. The other thing that I'd recommend is to plan when you're doing like a big day of temples, for example. So my mom and I kind of woke up one day and we're like, oh, I don't know what we want to do, and just started walking around, and then we ended up doing all the temples, but we weren't properly dressed for any temples. So they rent you like these random skirts. If you are going to go to the temples, just make sure you are appropriately dressed, and maybe plan a day so you do dress for that on that day. That's what I'd recommend, so you don't have these weird green plaid thing that was not cute.
First up is this delicious Thai pancake. It is one of the best things that I had in Thailand, and you can get it in Koh Tao. When you exit the ferry terminal, there's these 2 vendors selling these Thai pancakes, and they are both fabulous. I went there almost every night and definitely gained about 5 pounds during my short time in Koh Tao. Next up is this scary looking fish. Not really sure what kind it is, but it was very tasty and I really did enjoy it. So if you have the opportunity to try a scary looking fish in Thailand, I recommend. Next is our favorite happy hour. So if you go to the Jim Thompson house, they have a really good happy hour and they have really fun cocktails. I also recommend getting the 50 baht smoothies, which are all over Thailand because they are addicting as heck, and I probably had one every single day during my time in Thailand, which is saying something. Another favorite is corn on a stick. If you know me, I don't really have to elaborate much on this one. I'm not going to pretend to remember what these next two dishes were, but I didn't really have many photos of all the good food that I ate in Thailand, and I remember this tasting good. So here it is, some more tasty seafood. Next up is green papaya salad. Very tasty. I had it many times on this trip. Highly recommend. Tom yum soup was another personal favorite. Highly recommend. It was a very good choice. So I just googled durian and jackfruit, and turns out they're not the same thing. So I tried one of those. Not really sure which one it is. I think it is a durian. But if you know, comment below. I'm very curious now.
So we only had 3 weeks in Thailand, and like I said, we didn't want it to be super rushed. We did find ourselves not making it to northern Thailand, which I wish we got to do. That is all good, and I'll get there another time. So I hear great things about Pai and Chiang Mai, but again, we just ran out of time. So my mom ended up flying from Krabi to Bangkok, and she stayed in a hotel the night and then ended up flying back home. I flew to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, spent a few days there before going to Singapore and then Australia. So I'll cover that in my next videos. I really enjoyed Thailand, and I think it's a beautiful place for individuals of all ages. My mom and I both really enjoyed it, and it was really fun getting to connect with her again, and because we haven't been on a trip for a little while together, so it was really nice just to have some mother-daughter time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.